Hey guys, back for another episode. So today's going to be the first part in a series on grafting that I'm going to start. There's been a bit more of interest in it, it seems like, in the cannabis community, and I wanted to do a new series on it to share some of the things I've learned since I initially started it almost, a year ago or so. So to allow anyone who wants to try it themselves have a chance to follow along with what I'm doing. So I'm going to be putting up updates with in kind of real time, so after 5 or 10 days or whatever. And so if you're doing it and following along, you can see the progress I'm making, if it matches what you're doing. If you have any issues, you can post them in the comments and we can all learn from each other. So whenever I share that I do this with people on YouTube, the most common response isn't how I do it, but rather why I do it. And the reason for me, the most common response that I give to it is mostly for fun. But there are practical reasons to do it, and conventionally, grafting is done, like for fruit trees, for example, where you're utilizing the vigor of the rootstock, so the lower part of the graft, for usually its dwarfing characteristic in that case for most fruit trees, or maybe for disease resistance or temperature tolerance or something like that. But for cannabis, a herbaceous annual that's very vigorous, pretty short season, those things, maybe someday you would be able to take advantage of that, but there's not many people breeding for disease resistance specifically right now, so I don't know, I think that's kind of a way off thing. The more practical reasons that I do it is that you can make multi-strain micro mothers. So a small trained plant with lots of different strains grafted onto it that I can take cuttings from or take scion from to graft onto other things. And basically you're minimizing plant count while maximizing the variety of strains you have. And also, like I said, it's fun, it's kind of cool, to have one of these kind of Frankenstein plants with all these different varieties on one, kind of a sampler pack or whatever. Coming up, I also want to try to do a single plant breeding run. So where basically I want to make seeds on one plant where I either graft a male onto a female or vice versa. I think the ideal way to do it would be to pick a really nice male and then have a multi-strain female plant with a bunch of female varieties, and then graft that male in the middle of that to allow it to pollinate all the females around it. So to have you guys follow along, I'm going to go ahead and go over the equipment that I'm going to use for these grafts. And by the way, there are other herbaceous annuals that are being grafted onto various rootstock. Like I know you can buy grafted tomatoes, very small cuttings that they'll ship in the mail actually, and they use these little plastic connector grafting things. But the equipment I'm going to use is pretty simple, except for one thing that you will probably have to order, and that's why I'm going to show it to you now, so you have a chance to get it before the next part of the series where we're going to actually go ahead and get started grafting. And that thing is some parafilm. And if you've been following along, I'm sure you've seen me use it or reference it. And what it is this transparent paraffin-based film. And it has some useful properties that when you stretch it, well, that's a bad example there, but you can see here that it doesn't tear, it actually just gets thinner up to a point. Eventually it will break. But because it sticks to itself, and because it's elastic like that, you can actually apply pressure to it, and it holds that pressure. It's the perfect stuff for these type of herbaceous cuttings. And you could use, some electrical tape. Sometimes this is used for grafting on trees, but those are, hardwood cuttings pretty much, and are much larger than what you would use for cannabis. So I'd highly recommend getting this stuff. You can order it on Amazon. Just search for parafilm. If you search for grafting tape, make sure it references parafilm. You can try some of the other grafting tape, but not everything is elastic like this. Some of it is more similar to just regular plastic. So the next thing you're going to need is something to cut your scion and your rootstock. And traditionally people would use a grafting knife, which is like a one-sided, where it's like a wedge like this, one side sharpened knife. And you might be able to use a knife for cannabis, but I would highly recommend just using a razor, just because how thin the blade is. You really need that for getting a nice precise cut, especially if you're working with quite small plants. And I went ahead and just got a whole box of them a while ago, and every time one goes dull, I'll just go ahead and grab another one, and the old ones I'll use for some other use. The next thing you're going to need is some way to keep in the humidity around the graft and the scion. And you could put the whole thing inside of a humidity dome in a tray and get that really humid. But the way I'm going to show you that I'm going to do it, I'm just going to use some of this plastic from a regular produce bag from the grocery store. And to seal that up, I'm going to use a lighter. And basically that's it. The only other thing you're going to need is some grafting material. So some plants to transfer from one to another to make your multi-strain mothers or whatever you want to do with it. Just wanted to share with you guys one of my favorite local places to go get food to eat out. And it's a Mexican place in this really unassuming gas station that I pass through sometimes, and whenever I'm going that way, I always stop at this place, and judging it from the outside, you'd never guess how good the food is in there. And the owners, I think, are from Oaxaca, that area of Mexico. And today I got one of their specialities, which is a roasted pumpkin seed sauce burrito. And I know it doesn't look like much, but man, this stuff is so freaking good. And I think they call it, I think, sikilpak, something like that. And he was telling me that that's a Mayan phrase, and sikil means roasted pumpkin seeds, and pak means roasted tomatoes, which come together into this kind of salsa. Yeah, just really great umami taste and just awesome flavor. I really like this stuff. And they have this red sauce, and for the life of me I can't remember the pepper that goes into it, but it's some type of dried pepper. It's not chipotle or poblano or any of those common ones. He told me before, but I forgot. But it's got the most kind of like complex yet simple flavor to it. It's so difficult to describe. When you initially taste it, it really doesn't taste like much of anything, almost kind of oily. And then right after that, you get this smoky, salty kind of umami taste. And then it only becomes spicy at the very back end of it. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and run out and actually go grab a clone from the dispensary. I don't have anything right now that I need to graft into. Everything's kind of taken care of. But I'm going to go ahead and grab one for the series. And we'll see you in about a week or so to go ahead and do the first graft. And if you're following along, go ahead and gather all of the equipment. And thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Keep on growing.